Welcome to It's a Woman's World. And I'd also like to welcome to you today Mary Hitchcock. Mary is a crew member on our show. Hi, Mary.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm so looking forward to doing this show with you. We're going to be co-hosting together today.
I know.
Yeah. Well, let's get started. I'd like to introduce Dr. Susan Strauss.
Hi.
Dr. Strauss, welcome to the show.
Thank you very
Welcome.
much. Delight to be here.
All right.
We're excited that you're here as well.
Thank you.
Yes, we are, because of these two prevalent issues, which I have to say are two unfortunate issues, but I'm glad you're here and we're going to talk about it. And what we're talking about is harassment and bullying. And you are an expert, and you're going to talk to us about what's going on in the schools and
The difference between them, too.
And
Yes.
absolutely, right,
Yes.
Mary, the difference.
So I think a lot of people out there have heard both of them, but I think by you explaining what actually the difference is in the problem, it's going to really help out.
Yes, and it is a confusing issue for people, not only for parents, but also for school personnel. I work as an expert witness for lawsuits, and sometimes we'll even hear from school administrators saying, you know, I really am confused. I don't know what the difference is between bullying and between harassment and assault and sexual assault. Some have not even heard of Title IX, which is the law that outlaws harassment in the schools, and yet they keep wanting to refer to the misconduct by students as bullying, which is not always true. In fact, far more students are harassed than bullied, and yet the bullying framework is what's being used within school districts to deal with student misconduct.
Okay, so simple example. So if I have a child in school and another student is not nice to them, so I guess we would call that bullying. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you hear in the news.
Yes.
That's the common phrase, it's bullying, you're being
Right.
bullied. What is the big difference
Yeah.
between the two?
Very good question. And really, the school won't know what the difference is until they do an investigation. So it's at their own peril when a student or a parent comes forth to a school official and identifies this is certain kinds of behavior that my child is experiencing. The school has to do an investigation to determine whether or not it might be harassment based on that student's protected class. And by a protected class, I'm referring to all of us belong to a variety of protected classes such as gender, race, ethnicity, color, disability, those sorts of things. So a school district needs to investigate to determine whether or not the behavior might in fact be bullying or is it harassment based on a protected class. And you asked about the differences, and those are really important distinctions to make. And the reason that the distinctions are important is that bullying is not illegal. There is no federal law against it, and there is no state law against bullying. So when schools mislabel behavior as bullying and they fail to follow through to make the behavior stop, parents are thinking, well, I guess there's nothing else I can do. Whereas when it's harassment, there are laws, civil rights laws, similar to in the workplace, that protect students. And so parents have a right to demand that school districts adhere to the law. And the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights also requires that schools deal with harassment differently than they do bullying. So there needs to be an investigation. The differences between the two are this. If a child is being bullied, it's because, maybe they wear weird shoes, or they might be annoying to another student, or they might end up wearing clothes that aren't in, or they wear their hair that isn't in. So it deals with areas that don't have anything to do with somebody's race or age or those sorts of things. For example, the U.S. Department of Ed says only about 30% of kids are bullied. But, for example, 80% of kids are sexually harassed.
Really?
And that doesn't look at harassment of kids because of their religion or because of their race or ethnicity. So those are important distinctions. It requires a different response by schools, and parents need to know what their rights are. It's so bad, as a matter of fact, that back in October of last year, the U.S. Department of Ed sent out a letter to schools throughout the country warning them, look, you've got to be careful here because not all behavior is bullying, and you've got to make a determination via an investigation whether it's bullying or harassment and act accordingly.
Okay. So, Mary, you and I are both mothers.
Yes.
And I was just thinking, Susan, when your child comes home and if they're upset, well, it's very upsetting as a parent as well.
Yes.
And so what tips do you have? What should parents, be listening to from their kids when they're coming home from school?
What are the questions we should be asking, or what are some tools that we can use?
Good question. what you want to be able to do is to ask the kids to define to you very objective behaviors that they're experiencing. So if they just say, well, so-and-so called me names, you need to find out, tell me what names. Or so-and-so grabbed me. Where did he or she grab you?
Okay.
So you've got to get to the observable, objective kind of behavior. Kids nowadays are getting so used to being called names that are sexual, for example, or are based on sexual orientation or gender nonconformity, yes, even in elementary school, that they don't even think about as something sexual. So sometimes, though, they know they don't want to say the word. So you've got to encourage them to have the freedom to tell you those specific words. And if they grabbed the child in the crotch or in the breast, they've got to be able to say that specifically.
Okay.
And then as a parent, you need to document what exactly happened to the child and who were the witnesses. Did the child complain to anyone? If so, to whom did the child complain? If not, then you have to decide as a parent, what is your role going to be? And sometimes the child doesn't want to tell you because they don't want you to call the school because they're afraid they're going to be retaliated against if the kids that were perpetrating against them are called on the carpet for their behavior. But it's important for parents to call. And again,
Do we just call the school? You're saying as a parent they should just call the school, and that should be the first step that we should be taking?
well, the first
if there
step
was.
Excuse me, go ahead.
Oh no! If there was something that we were able to get out of our child to, explain to us what's happening, our next step at that point would be, you think, to call the school, and who should we be talking to? Who do you think is going to be the most effective?
Very good question. Certainly, some of it depends on the degree of severity or pervasiveness that the child has experienced it. And some of it's a judgment call as to whether or not you call the school. If the kid was called, oh, you're a weirdo, do you call the school when it's been a first-time event? That's something you're going to have to decide.
Yeah.
But be sure you document no matter what. And, of course, talk to your child about, okay, what are some ways that you can deal with it when Johnny or Susie is calling you names? But as soon as it becomes something that's sexual or racial or religious, then make sure that you do contact the school and give them a heads up that this has been occurring because they do need to intervene. And just be sure that you document.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think when you're the parent and you want to make the right decision, but you don't want to ruffle feathers either, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
very.
I mean, real honestly, you feel
I agree.
right?
It's one of those things that I want my child to come to me and trust me, but it's like some things we don't know black and white. What are the things we should be calling or what not?
Sure.
Right.
And I agree with you to document because then you'll start seeing a pattern. I would
Yes.
think
Right.
if it was
Yes.
happening.
I would think so.
And I think sometimes, teachers don't know that the behavior occurred. So sometimes it's a matter of just calling up the teacher and saying, hey, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, I just want to give you a heads up that, my son Johnny is having a little bit of conflict with so-and-so and there's been some name calling. I want to give you a head up so that you have an opportunity to follow through on
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
And assume that they will.
Right.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will.
Well, I had a situation where my little guy, when he was in one of the first years of the grade school, he came home and he said, well, Mommy, somebody told me in my class that they want to kill me. And I thought, oh, well, isn't that interesting? And so I asked him a few more questions, and I said, tell me, they say anything else? Well, he said, well, he just got mad at me and said, I just want to kill you. And I thought that was a pretty strong statement
Yes.
for about
Very
a
strong.
5-year-old
Yes.
at that time. So I did ask the teacher about
Good.
it, and I went a little deeper. I dug a little deeper, and I said, do you think this child has any issues because my son is a different color? Because being Indian, I thought, well, I wanted to know as the mom, is there something because of where we're from
Yes.
that was exchanged? And I told the teacher, if that's the case, I want to strengthen his confidence and make sure that I deal with that. So in that instance, though, she looked at me kind of like, oh, no, kind of surprised. Like, why
Yeah.
are you digging deeper? But as a mom, I felt strongly, I need to know, is it because of another reason? And in
Yes.
this case, it didn't turn out to be that reason. So I guess, Susan, what I'm getting at is, as the mom who went into that situation, I wanted to know, was it because of some of these other reasons? But the reaction I got was kind of like, why would you even think that?
Well, was the teacher white?
Yes.
Well, that's why she would think, why would you even think that? She's
Okay.
in the majority. But you bring up a very good point, and that is that sometimes the harassment, if you will, towards a child that is different, in this case your son, who is Indian, may not have any words that deal with his ethnicity.
Okay.
However, if he's the one that's being singled out for the kinds of behavior you're talking about, then in fact it may end up being a violation of his civil rights.
Okay.
So if the bullying, for example, is directed towards a child because of their race, because of their sex, because of their religion, then it is no longer bullying. Then it is
Crosses the line.
race-based or gender-based or ethnicity-based harassment.
One of the other things I'd like to just quickly talk about is why is this so important? I mean, I know that's almost kind of a, why are you asking that question, Ann? But I want people to really understand, if we don't deal with bullying, if we don't deal with harassment, the ramifications on children. And can you talk to us about
Sure.
that? What happens to kids?
Well, whether it's bullying or harassment, it interferes with their ability to learn.
Okay.
So that's a huge one. And based on civil rights law, that's what makes harassment illegal, is it interferes with your ability to learn. The other thing that it does is it lowers children's self-esteem. It interferes with their grades. Sometimes when they're experiencing it, they might change, if they're an older student, what classes they take in high school, for example. They might even decide to walk a different way to go to classes so they don't have to walk through a gauntlet of kids that are going to be harassing them or bullying them. It can increase their... Because of their self-esteem diminishing, they may end up becoming depressed, becoming suicidal, even killing themselves. So we know that suicide does happen. So it's important for parents to play a role, obviously, in that, and to tune into any change in your child's behavior, because that change will happen, whether they're being bullied or whether they're being harassed.
And a lot of things that you just brought up are a good starting point to let people know out there, look for these things. Are they taking classes that you would think that they normally wouldn't take, or are they their grades are starting to slip, or, kind of this gives us an awareness as a parent to start looking for these signals.
Yes. Do they hang out in their room more often? Is there a change in their
behavior?
Eating habits? Are they crying? Are they more irritable? Do they not want to go out with their friends? So there's just a ton of different symptoms, if you will. Now, some of those might mean something else, but that's where, as a parent, you need to do some discussion, get into some discussions with your child to determine that.
And then, Dr. Strauss, in just about the minute that we have left, would you tell us if somebody wanted more information?
Sure.
What could they do? Oh, you've recently written a book.
Yes, this book will be out in December, and it's called Sexual Harassment and Bullying, a guide for keeping kids safe and holding schools accountable. And it's an in-depth resource manual for parents, youth advocates, and actually for teachers and administrators as well, that really is very pragmatic. It differentiates between harassment and bullying, which is an important distinction, as I mentioned, but it really tells parents, what can I do if I want to partner with the school to make sure that these behaviors aren't occurring? What can I do? But it also has a whole chapter about, if in fact it happens, how can you make sure the school stops the behavior? And it gets into such things as ensuring that whoever does the investigation has been trained in investigating, and what is a good investigation. So there's good pragmatic information in there for parents and other advocates.
Wonderful. Do you have a website also?
I do.
For more information?
Yes, I do. And there's information in general for parents and others that are interested in it, and as well as the book, and it's straussconsulting.net.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
This was
Thank you
a
for
great
being here.
conversation. We
Very
really
much
enjoyed
so.
it,
Thank you.
and
My pleasure.
Learned a lot.
Very informative.
Thank you.